Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Gear Up Fireside Chat. We'll be talking a little bit about the college application process. And so I guess I'll get started. My name is Rose. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from East Burke, Vermont, but I now live here in Essex, New York with Margaret. We live in the same home, so we were able to be unmasked together. We're also both vaccinated, so that helps. I went to the University of Vermont. I was a psychology major, and I'm now a fellow here at CFES, working part-time in the office and part-time at Willsboro Central School. And so yeah, Margaret.
Yep, like Claire said, I'm Margaret. We're roommates, which is very exciting. I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, far away from here, and then traveled to New York to go to Colgate University. I graduated in May with a degree in religion and English. At CFES, I work at Mariah Central School as a full-time Gear Up Fellow, so I work with the 3rd through 9th graders there, and I use she, her pronouns. I think that's all of it. Before we delve more into the CFES core practices and a little bit about the Gear Up grant, I would like to acknowledge two things. One, we started the Fireside Chats because we were struggling with the way that the pandemic has changed social interactions. You can't just like sit around with people and just
have a
chat
conversation
the way we used to, because everyone's masked, everyone's a little uncomfortable, everyone's a little sad all the time. So this is an acknowledgement that the pandemic is changing the way that we operate in the business world, but also the way that students learn. And so everything we say should be taken with a small grain of salt. Just in that the pandemic is making things hard. The other acknowledgement I'd like to give is a land acknowledgement. And as I was writing one earlier this week, I found it a lot harder than I anticipated. We are currently on Mohawk land here in Essex, New York. But I would like to share something that I read while researching this land acknowledgement, that published by Oregon State University, so far away from here, Oregon State University. Part of their land acknowledgement says that all education happens on native land. And so I think that's something we should remember during the Fireside Chat, but also in our classrooms, because I think it's really important. But Rose, we talk about the core practices.
Yes, absolutely. So CFES, who is kind of our parent organization for our Gear Up grant, they have three core practices, or we have three core practices that we like to use in order to help students. So that is mentoring, pathways to college and career, as well as the essential skills. So that's kind of our framework that we use. And then the Gear Up grant takes it kind of another step further, and so using those core practices, we help students achieve academically, post-secondary success. We focus a lot on STEM because we know that STEM careers are increasing exponentially. There are so many more STEM careers, so really helping students build awareness and skills in those areas, and preparing well-educated, well-rounded citizens so that they can go forth and make change happen in the world. So that's a little bit about what we do. And so that post-secondary, going off to college or some sort of training, that's what we really wanted to talk about today, is how do you get there? Do you know all the steps? If you don't, we can talk about what we have both done. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'll kick it off with story time,
Yes.
Mostly because Fireside Chats let us do that a little bit, tell you about ourselves and our own experiences with higher education. So I can start, if you don't mind. Like I said, I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which if you live on the East Coast, you probably don't know where that is. That's okay. It is 45 minutes west of Lake Michigan in the lower peninsula, the two parts of Michigan, the lower one. And I went to a school, Grand Rapids Catholic Central is the name of my high school. It was just a high school, 4 years, a Catholic private school. And my college application process, where to begin? In high school, story time, I would say that mostly I was involved with the band. I was in the concert and marching band. I played the trumpet. I also played volleyball year-round. I was not in my high school's team, but I played on a club team in West Michigan all year. I played a little bit of softball. I was on some leadership teams in the National Honor Society. I also had a job. My parents were restaurant owners, and so from as soon as they could start legally paying me, they were doing that. So I had a job really early on. But my first college tour actually happened way younger than most students because I have an older brother who was touring colleges when he was a junior in college, I think when most people start, and I was an 8th grader. So my parents, I have a twin sister, my parents would just stick me and my sister in the backseat of the car and like lug us through these different college campuses.
Yeah.
And I very specifically remember too, I remember going to see the University of Chicago and thinking, I hate this, like take me away. I don't like being in a city, this is too crowded, I don't know how to get anywhere, this is not for me. And then I remember taking a tour with him of Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio, and just being so hot, being like, I can't go to school this far south. I was so hot. And so while those are not profound realizations at all, it kind of pointed me in the direction when I started looking for colleges towards the north. I went to Colgate University in central New York and away from big cities. I went to a small school in a rural area. So my senior year, we were applying. I officially only applied to 3 schools. I applied to Colgate, early decision, where I ended up going. I applied to Albion College, which is a small liberal arts college in Albion, Michigan, kind of close to Ann Arbor. And then I applied to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Go blue. So that was my college. That's like the nutshell. But I'm curious to hear yours.
Sure. So I actually just remembered as you were talking about it. So I also have an older brother. I also have an older sister. So I too got my college tour start really young. But I didn't go on tours with them. I just helped them move into college was kind of what it ended up being. So my brother is 11 years older than I am. So when he was moving into college at 18, I was 9. I think that's how that math works.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really, really little, and so I remember being on the college campus. The first school that he went to, he transferred after his freshman year. So he first went to Johnson State College, which is now Northern Vermont University. And so it's a super tiny school. So I got to see that. It was in a really quiet place, and I guess I remember thinking that it seemed like a really quiet place. And then he transferred to the University of Bridgeport in Bridgeport, Connecticut, which was right in the middle of the city, and that I also didn't like. It was far too busy for me. But I remember going to school with him, and then there was some point, I think it was my sister's college graduation, so I would have been, I think, in my 8th grade. I went and stayed at my sister's dorm for her graduation, because my parents didn't want to get me a room at the hotel, so I just stayed in her dorm room. And I do remember that as well. There was a party. I remember being like, all right, I'm just going to hang out in her room. I don't want any part of this. So I do remember seeing some schools as a kid, and then my college application process, I only applied to 2 schools, the University of Maine, Orono, and the University of Vermont. The University of Vermont was early action, and so I ended up getting it, and so I went there. But yeah, I guess I had it pretty easy because I had 2 older siblings who had already gone through the college application process. So I didn't really have to do a lot of thinking on my own. My parents were kind of just like, okay, here's what's next, here's what you need to do next. So I definitely had it pretty easy because people in my family had already been through the process.
I think this is our official plug though, if you can go, even if it's not for you, just go.
Tag along with anyone who's going to school. Even if it's not a tour officially, just go to their school if they're in college.
Okay, so you said UVM and the University of Maine, Orono?
Yes, because there are several University of Maine campuses.
Okay, so
colleges.
UVM makes sense to me. You grew up in Vermont.
Right.
The University of Vermont, in my head, is the only college in the state of Vermont.
Which is not true. There are many more. Check them out.
True. But how did you find the other one?
I actually can't remember. I was trying to remember for this. I think it was something my guidance counselor had suggested. So when I was originally looking at schools, I was looking at pre-veterinary colleges. I was pretty locked into the idea of large animal veterinary science. I had to make a switch my sophomore year after realizing that I can't assist in surgery because I don't like the sight of blood. So switched to psychology. The University of Vermont, fortunately, still worked out because they have both a veterinary program and a great psychology program. But yeah, I think Maine was just this idea that they had a psychology program and also maybe some horses. Some horseback riding. I don't know. But so I guess, so of the pieces of your application, there are several things. The number one thing I want to tell you is the common application. So the common application helps you get into 800 different colleges, and it's essentially you fill out one form and then you can send it to however many other schools. There might be other things you have to attach for other schools, like sometimes they have additional requirements, but the first thing that you should definitely check out if you're applying to a school is the common application. And so that's definitely what I did. I assume you did the common app.
We actually, as part of the Common App, you have to write essays.
Yes.
And there are a couple different prompts you can choose from. And my high school English class, my senior year, our very first assignment that year is we had to write a draft of the Common App essay.
Oh wow, that's smart.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was trying to find my Common App essay for you, and I couldn't. But what I could find was the assignment I wrote for that English class.
Gotcha. Yep. So one of the things that the Common App is going to require is that essay. So they have a list of prompts, you can pick from them. My number one recommendation, or two of my number one recommendations, pick a topic that's personal for you. I think we both picked pretty personal topics for our application, and so the more that you can talk about it in depth and connect to it emotionally, it's going to make a much stronger essay. And then the second thing I would say is have as many people as you can read it. Because just the more people that look at it, the more they're going to help you refine it. Because it really is kind of your introduction of yourself to this college. So it's good to have it personal and be well written. Another thing is a resume. Do you want to talk about your resume? You listed quite a number of things.
Yes, so like I said, my resume in high school, I had a job. I bussed tables at my parents' restaurants. I was on some leadership teams. They had specific names for the school I went to. I played travel volleyball. I was on the softball team. I was in the band. And so my resume was a lot of, to start my academic stuff. So, you know, this is my GPA. These are the AP classes I've taken. Stuff like that. If I received any honors, I don't think I did in high school, but if you have, you should put them on your resume.
Yes.
For sure.
Honors can be any school-specific awards. I got personally the Vermont Scholars Award, so based on my GPA, I ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Vermont, and because it was an academically based award, I put that on my resume because I figured that it showed my work in school.
Yep. And then basically the key takeaway from this is that you want your resume to be as diverse as possible, right? So I worked a lot of jobs at my parents' restaurants. I bussed, I dishwashed, I was sometimes a hostess, sometimes I was a food runner, right? There's like so many things I was doing, but I didn't put them all down and have that be my entire resume. Because that's not that interesting. So instead I'm like, okay, I work Friday and Saturday nights at the restaurant, and then I compete in marching band competitions on Saturday afternoons. And then during the week, I have volleyball practice at night. And then on Thursdays, I go to meetings with my leadership team. And so having that diversity is what's really important.
Yeah, totally. So any babysitting jobs that you have, something that was really big on my resume, I do a lot of pet sitting. So dogs and horses and actually all sorts of other animals, alpacas at one point. So putting, you know, just any sorts of those jobs. So most of mine were pretty informal. It was just kind of my neighbors and working for them, but you know, that still counts. I mean, it's a job if you earn money for it, but not even, I think necessarily things you've earned money for, just, you know, things you've been involved in. So I was in our select chorus and I did some tutoring and I did a few other things. Was a videographer for sports, so I got to put that all on my resume, and so just starting to build that, any summer jobs you can add on there really helps.
Yep. And the formatting of that can take many different forms. I would just
Look it
ask
up.
to see someone else's, as I think I made my first one.
Yep, yeah, I took my older sister's and changed pretty much what she had on there. But there are a lot of really great formats online that you can check out. So the essay, we have our resume, and then the next thing we're going to need are the letters of recommendation.
Can I add one thing before you keep going?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about the essay as being like a part of the Common App. The Common App is also just a lot of like very strange questions about like, do you identify as religious? What religion do you follow? What is your middle name? And so it's like filling out basically any form you fill out if you go to the doctor's office plus.
Yep.
But it's just like demographics basically of like who you are with something that could be put into a statistical, like,
yes.
Here's a graph of the number of women we had apply. So it's that plus the essay plus a couple other things in your transcript.
Right, and I think those demographic things don't like play a huge role in whether or not you get in. They're just trying to kind of get an idea of who applies. I think it does sometimes make a difference with their diversity requirements and things like that. But yeah, so it's like, I don't think it's a super long thing, but it is something you'll have to sit down and fill out and answer all sorts of questions. But those letters of recommendation. So there's something you need for college. There's something you're going to need in the future for jobs, all sorts of things. Want to explain a little bit more about what it is?
Yeah, and so I don't think I ever read a letter of rec that was written for me when I was in high school when I was applying to college. I remember asking my Model UN coach. His name was Tim Trems, and Trems was my AP history teacher. He taught other classes at school, but he was in charge of my Model UN time and had taught me in that class, AP US history. And so I asked him to write a letter of recommendation for me, basically just speaking to my strengths as a student and what I brought to a communal team environment and any other positive things he had to say about me. And he put them on one piece of paper in letter format and sent it to the guidance office at my high school, and they uploaded it to my Common App. For me. There's like weird communication stuff you have to do with people uploading and downloading, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add about it? I wish I knew what it like looked like.
Like on the application? Or?
No, just in terms of like what like they say, what people actually say.
Yeah, so I guess I can say, so I asked one of my math teachers, she was someone where I actually didn't really like her style of teaching at first, but I realized over time that it was really very good, and so she was a very good teacher, and so I thought that she was able to bring out like kind of like the best student in me, and so that's one of the reasons why I asked her. And then I also asked my history teacher, so with letters of recommendation, you often ask someone who you've like had multiple classes with or someone who's known you for a while. I actually picked my history teacher because I only had one class with him for a semester, but he was also someone where I thought that I was just like my best version of myself as a student, where I just worked well with others in that class and I was able to just like absorb the material and kind of answer his questions in a way that like I didn't feel as confident in other classes. And so I thought that he saw me as a really good student, and so he wrote me a letter of recommendation because I just asked him after class one day if he thought he could write one, and so he did. But I guess the letter itself, it's really just someone who knows you talking a little bit about how they know you, what they think really are your strengths, the strengths that they've seen in you, and why they think you would be a good fit for college. So I had to just ask for more letters of recommendation for graduate school, and so I actually was sent one of my recommenders sent the letter to me, and so it just had, how we knew each other and, what he thought I did well and why he thought that I would do well in a graduate program.
Great. Beyond that, there is the FAFSA, the free application for
Federal student aid.
Federal student aid, thank you, Rose.
Teamwork.
The free application for federal student aid. And even though it says federal student aid, a lot of colleges, when they're going through their own financial aid processes, just use the FAFSA.
Yep.
There are other forms that you sometimes have to fill out. I always had to fill out the CSS profile when I was applying for financial aid at Colgate. And that's usually used for private schools. But not all of them, right? Like every school has their own financial aid process, which is what makes that hard.
States also have their own. So Vermont, it's the Vermont Student Assistance Corporation, VSAC. In New York, it's called TAP. So really, I think what this kind of all boils down to, so definitely fill out the FAFSA. It opens October 1st. It will give you money hopefully for school. There is a checklist of things that you're going to have to get done, and it's something that you're just going to have to try and work on a little bit every day. So working on the essay a little bit every day. There is just kind of a checklist you got to do, and so we're kind of trying to talk you through that checklist, that FAFSA and all the other financial aid stuff. That's just another thing. You will often need to sit down with a parent or guardian, maybe go through some tax stuff, get that filled out, and a tip that I have is call anyone if you have questions. Call all of the numbers that you can find. Call the student aid office at the school, call the just general admissions office. People are really willing to help if you are able to reach out. So sending emails, trying to find like a name of a specific person, so it's reaching out to someone specifically. We know there are a lot of things, but you can certainly do it.
Another point about financial aid applications, they are so hard, and they are different at every school, and the best thing you can do for yourself is make an appointment to go through it with someone. Trying to do it on your own, especially the first time you're doing it, is a nightmare. So if you have a high school guidance counselor, they usually have FAFSA nights or office hours where you can go in and they will help you fill it out.
If you are a CFES Gear Up school, ask your Gear Up fellow for help. We're able to help you fill out the FAFSA.
So that's my big piece of advice, is just ask someone, because it's really hard, and that's an unfortunate reality, but it gets easier if you do ask around.
Yes, yep, so there's the FAFSA, there's the CSS profile, there's the state aid, and then something else that I would really, really recommend is exploring your scholarship options. So there's the Common App, right, that we've talked about. They have now made a common scholarship application. And so what it does is if you go in and you probably fill out the same questions you just filled out on the Common App, but it'll allow you to apply for multiple scholarships at one time. So scholarships are nice because they're money that you don't have to pay back, not like a loan. They're different than a loan. And so that's not the only place you can look for scholarships based on sometimes like activities that you do. They're often local scholarships. What is it called? Lions Club? So there are different like community organizations that you can get scholarships from. So helping that, so your FAFSA and the school might give you a certain amount of money, but if you're able to locate some scholarships on your own, you can add that and keep decreasing that cost of college. Maybe even get to go to college for free. That'd be really fun.
I sadly have nothing to add on the scholarships. I only got financial aid through the school I went to because I was out of state, and that's harder for financial aid purposes, so I'm unfortunately
That's right.
there.
Yep.
Okay, but we have two more sections for you of this little spiel we're giving. I'm asking Rose to share her closing tips and tricks.
My closing tips and tricks. One of them is definitely that Common Scholarship app. I don't think I knew about it in high school, so it definitely would have been nice to get a few more scholarships. I'm going to second that calling people. So I personally just had some issues with graduate school trying to figure out about financial aid. Actually figured out that I hadn't clicked a specific button and was not an admitted student, so they did not know that I was even trying to go. So that was a problem, but I called a couple of people. They were able to help me out, made sure that got all set and taken care of. So yeah, call people if you have questions. Use the internet for research too. So if you're like, all right, what else do I have to do? What else is part of this application process? If you don't come back and watch this video, go and find, a checklist online. The College Board website has a lot of information. They're very helpful.
Yeah, really helpful.
What about you? What are your tips and tricks?
My tips and tricks. While we were creating the outline for this fireside chat, I kept having weird flashes of like when I was applying to college. And so one distinctive memory I have is this like absolute panic when I was trying to apply to Colgate Early Decision, so my application was due a lot earlier than my application for other schools. And I remember getting a call from my guidance counselor, who I had met with like twice. Like we didn't have a program that was big enough. Our guidance office was very understaffed. And so he called me down to his office in the middle of class and was like, your transcript is due, but it's not in. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I put in a request for it to be turned in weeks ago.
Oh my gosh.
And like something had gone wrong, so I had like literally 5 minutes to turn in my transcript to Colgate.
What is the transcript?
My transcript is an official document from my high school listing the classes I took and the grades I got in them. So it's like my academic report, my official academic like profile. And so you have to turn that in with the Common App, and he was just like, it's not in. And I was like, but it's due today. Like, what do you mean it's not in? And so my biggest tip and trick is that you are going to think at some point during the college application process that time management is like, fine. You're gonna be like, I'm fine. The issue though is that the process sometimes isn't just you. Like sometimes it
gets messed up on the school's end.
Yeah, like it sometimes is your guidance counselor and the person who's writing your letter of recommendation and the secretary who is sending your transcript to the college that you're applying to. And so if you can be ahead of schedule so that you have a week to check on this stuff, like do it. Be ahead of schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Like, absolutely.
Make a spreadsheet with the dates.
Mm-hmm.
You also reminded me. So, early decision, early action, and just other general deadlines. So, early decision, I think Claire and I mentioned this in our last fireside chat, but early decision is when you apply to the school and you say, if I can get in, if you accept me, I'm absolutely going, no questions asked. And so those application deadlines are pretty early in the fall because you've already sort of made a decision, and so they have you apply a little bit earlier. So early decision says, if I get in, yes, I'm going. So you applied early decision. I applied early action. So it's like early decision, but not quite as binding. So the early action says, like, if you let me in, there's like a 90% chance I'm going. And so that's what I did with the University of Vermont. So I found out if I got in earlier than other students. So if you apply early action or early decision, you can find out earlier if you get in.
Yep. A small note, you can get out of an early decision application if the financial aid is like the problematic component. It's binding in all areas except for that one. If you are like, I got no financial aid, I cannot go to the school.
Right. If you couldn't afford, or they can't.
You can opt out of that.
Yep.
Okay, but our last question is, we were talking about these flashes we kept having, but is there anything you wish you knew when you were applying to college that you know now?
I don't think so. I know you had one you wanted to share.
Yes, mine was strangely meta and like not actually logistical at all. Like I was explaining my resume to you all a little bit, and I was in the marching band, and I was on these leadership teams, and my piece of advice is that the persona of your college application, right, so me being like an award-winning marching band member, that doesn't follow you into college. Like, it's not like they're accepting you because they think you're exactly this person. And I didn't continue to play my instrument in college. I didn't like playing the trumpet that much. But I did it because I loved the teacher I had in high school, and I liked the community, and my siblings were in it. And it was really important to my family that I was part of this community, and so I just did. But then I went to college, and I was like, do I have to play an instrument? And nobody was like, yes, you do. So who you were in high school in that application, you can change that. It's not like a direct match. It's not like they're saying, we are taking you in this college
because you're going to join
our marching band. Like they just wanted to see what you were doing and what you were interested in.
They just want to know that, you have gone out there in the world and you've tried some things and you've been successful at some things.
And that you cared about something.
Yeah.
Like having that little, like, I cared about this.
Yeah. And so that's what they're accepting. They're accepting you and your passions and your strengths, and hoping that they can, build that even more. And yeah, you can absolutely change who you are. When you walk into college, you should not, when you walk out of college, you should not be the same person that you walked into college as. There are a lot of learning opportunities. Take advantage of them. So,
I think that's all from us, though. We are wrapping up.
Yes, please reach out to us if you have any questions. My email is rose@brilliantpathways.org.
And mine is Margaret@brilliantpathways.org.
So hopefully pretty easy to remember. But please reach out to us or your CFES fellow if you have any questions about the college application. And good luck!